Another compliancy trigger, one I've already alluded to, but I want to talk more in depth, I want to give it a little bit more attention, is authority. When people see you as an authority, they're more likely to be obedient or to comply with what you want them to do. And a great example of this was demonstrated by the professor Stanley Milgram when he was at Yale University. He put an ad in a newspaper for people to volunteer on a study relating to how punishment affects memory and learning. So a bunch of people thought it was pretty cool. They replied to the ad. They showed up at Stanley Milgram's office. And then what he did is he assigned 2 volunteers to every one of his research assistants. The research assistants dubbed one volunteer the learner and the other the teacher. The learner's job was to memorize a long list of words, and the teacher's job was to apply an electroshock every time the learner made a mistake. Now, for every consecutive mistake the learner made, the teacher was to increase the electroshock by 15 volts. So they proceeded with the study. They tied the learner down to a chair. They put electrodes all over his body. The teacher started asking the learner questions about the long list of words, and when the learner made a mistake, the teacher applied an electroshock to the learner that was a little bit uncomfortable. It felt, like a pinch. But sooner than later, the learner made yet another mistake. And this time, the teacher applied an electroshock 15 volts more powerful. This time, the poor learner was visibly uncomfortable. And a little bit after that, made yet another mistake. And the teacher applied an electroshock 15 volts more powerful than the last. This time, the poor learner was writhing in agony. And right after that, he made yet another mistake. And with no qualms, the teacher applied an electroshock 15 volts more powerful than the last. This time, the learner said, I don't want to go on with this. Let me out of this chair. This is ridiculous. Let me out of here. But the teacher kept asking the learner questions. And when the learner refused to answer the questions, he just wanted to leave. The teacher applied an electroshock 15 volts more powerful than the last. And you might be asking yourself, what's going on here? Did Milgram find a bunch of sadists? Nothing of the sort. Actually, the learners were paid actors. They weren't even volunteers. And they weren't being shocked. They were pretending to be in pain. The study was not a study on how punishment affects memory loss. It was a study on compliancy and how when one sees another as an authority, they're obedient or comply. All of the volunteers were put in the teacher role. Because the teachers or volunteers saw Milgram and the research assistants as an authority, they were obedient or compliant despite thinking that they were putting the learners through extreme agony and pain. That's the power of the compliancy trigger authority at work.